But even as we remember that, it needs to be pointed out that neither of them were saved immediately. All that to say, again, is that Peter is calling us, I believe, to faith. Rest assured that God sees, that God knows what He's doing, that God is fully capable of rescuing and saving the righteous or the godly. And not only that, God is fully capable of, in His own way and His own time, punishing the wicked. That brings us, of course, to the last section, beginning in verse 11, then going through the end of the chapter. So if we have this, if we're called to be aware, be mindful, to know that false teachers will come, we're called to have faith, to be assured that God sees and knows and is paying attention. I think the last instruction that Peter gives us is that, well, because of those two things, that we should be observant, that we too should be paying attention. There are always, I think, certainly at least often, warning signs before disaster strikes. So go back to some of the examples that I used at the beginning. In hindsight, there were warning signs to 9/11. There were warning signs to Pearl Harbor. If you have the technology, I suppose there are warning signs to volcanoes. Peter gives us a picture of this by giving us a description of what false teachers look like. See, it's sort of unhelpful to say, hey, be aware, something's coming, and don't worry, you just need to have faith, God has this. I mean, those are good things, they're helpful. But it's more beneficial to say, yeah, they're coming, and here's what they look like. Here's the sort of things that you need to be watching for. Beginning then in verse 10, Peter uses another literary device to describe these false teachers. He actually goes and he compares their character, compares their actions to different parts of the body. So in verse 10 and 11, he talks about how they speak. He talks about their mouth, if you will. He calls them irrational animals, creatures of instinct, born to be caught and destroyed, blaspheming about matters of which they are ignorant. So the first sort of characteristic, if you will, of a false teacher is that they are flippant and arrogant and bold in their language. They will readily talk about things of which they know nothing. It's been said that ignorance is bold, and that the problem today is that those who know the least know it the loudest. That's a sort of picture, Peter says, of these false teachers. They are quite willing to blaspheme, that is, to speak evil of or slander things, particularly things like angels and demons, to talk about things of which they really know nothing about. I would suggest that we see this even today sometimes with people or false teachers making pronouncements about demons and sort of angelic structures, and for someone else that they might take advantage of, someone else they might spread their poison to. Then the last thing that Peter says about their character, he talks about their heart. They have hearts. In verse 14, he says, trained in greed. It's literally this idea, this picture of they have gone to the gym to exercise their immoral hearts, if you will. It's almost like this is intentional. Hearts trained in greed. They have gone astray. They have followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved gain from wrongdoing. In other words, Peter's saying, look, their entire body, all of their character is corrupted. It's all flawed. It's all broken. The rest of the verse, or the remaining verses of the chapter, Peter describes their reality. He says, well, this is what they're like. This is what their character's like. This is how they act. This is what they do. And he sort of pulls the curtain back and he says, but look, here's the reality first, that they are empty. They are waterless springs, mists driven by a storm. The purpose of a spring or a well, of course, is that you might get water from it, that you might be refreshed by it. If a well has no water, if a spring is dry, it is absolutely useless. It will not satiate you. It will not quench your thirst. I like celery. It's kind of weird. It's a weird plant. It's a weird, I don't even know if it's a vegetable, but pretend it.